For my project, I interviewed my grandmother, Sandy Klapper, to learn about how her life was growing up as a Jew, in addition to the impact of World War II on her life.
Hi, my name is Sandra Ruth Klapper. My Jewish name is Shana Hinda, and I was born in Washington, D.C. My mother was a homemaker. My father worked for the government printing office in Washington, D.C., and he was a proofreader. Unfortunately, when I was 4.5 years old, my father died, and I had a brother who was 1.5 years old, and after the death of my father, we moved with my mother to Baltimore to live with my grandparents. And we lived with my grandparents for the rest of the time that we were living at home. My grandmother was very religious. We went to a shul that our next door neighbor was the president of, happened to be about 9 or 10 blocks away, but my grandmother thought that this was to give him the honor of us going to his shul. So we walked. We walked in the rain, we walked in the snow, we walked every place, and we did all go to shul. For the rest of my grandparents' lives, we lived with them. And so that's what happened. We became very close to the family. I knew all my cousins, I knew my uncles, my aunts, because everybody came to visit the grandmother, and so we were part of that. And it was a very comforting feeling that although my father had died, we still had people that cared for us. And I had wonderful uncles who took us in their car everywhere, and we felt like that we were part of a wonderful family.
Growing up around many Jews, Sandy had limited encounters with anti-Semitism.
Mainly, I lived in a very Jewish neighborhood, and I really didn't know anybody that wasn't Jewish. The elementary school was very interesting. At that time, they had Christmas assemblies. We had to sing the Christmas carols. So we decided, and that was a whole bunch of us, because most of the kids in the Glee Club were Jewish. When it came time to the word Jesus, we did this with our lips. We did not say the word Jesus.
Although she lived in a secluded ghetto of Jews, Sandy did have a non-Jewish friend.
But she never ever gave any indication of anti-Semitism. And the school I went to was a high school. It was Forest Park High School. And at the high school, there were mainly Jewish kids. And so she mingled totally with the Jewish kids.
Sandy first experienced anti-Semitism on her trip to Rivera Beach with her non-Jewish friend.
And one summer, we went to Rivera Beach, which is a beach in South Baltimore area. There was her mother, her father, her grandmother, my girlfriend, and me. And the grandmother, as we went by things, she would say, gas station, Amoco gas, Exxon gas, hotel. She was reading signs. We get to Rivera Beach, and she's still reading signs. Over the top of the entrance to the Rivera Beach, she's reading it. It says, restricted. And there was a great silence in the car. We all knew what that meant. And I didn't know what to do because I was only 16 years old. And so I said nothing. We went through the gates. We spent the day there. The entire time I was extremely uncomfortable. I just felt that if the people knew that I was Jewish, that they would be very unhappy that I was there. And I was very unhappy that I was there. There was no way I could have not gone in, and there was no way that I could have left by myself because I just couldn't do that. But it was not a very pleasant experience. I guess that was really my first experience in a place where I knew that I wouldn't be accepted if they knew I was Jewish. Every year we went to Atlantic City. When I was in Atlantic City, there was kosher hotels, several kosher hotels, and there was kosher restaurants. Now everybody goes to Ocean City. However, Ocean City was mainly restricted to Jews, and so that's when all the Jews went to Atlantic City. There was an incident. My parents decided with friends to go to Ocean City. So they go to Ocean City and they want to check in at a hotel. They go to the hotel and they have to register. And they said to the man, do you have any vacancies? And he said, of course. Here, fill out the registration and we'll give you your room. They filled out the registration. Their last name was Levy. The man behind the desk looked at the name and then said, I am so sorry, but all of our rooms are filled. The place was restricted. So my parents and their friends left, got in the car, drove to Atlantic City, where they were accepted.
Growing up during the war, Sandy had certain fears about the war.
Well, it was the Second World War started, and it was very scary for children. I think I was in the 3rd or 4th grade, and all I could think of was that because the war started, they were going to take us away from our family to a house somewhere.
For Sandy and other people living in the United States, a more conceivable fear was the threat of airstrikes, which they were prepared for by practicing air raid drills.
We did have air raid sirens, practice air raid sirens, where we had to go into the hall and sit down on the floor, and I think we put our heads down. So I don't know what they thought this would protect, but this is what we did.
At her young age, Sandy could not begin to comprehend the magnitude of what was happening to the Jews in Europe.
Remember, I was too little to really realize that all the Jews in Europe were being killed in the Holocaust, and I wasn't old enough to process that. So I just knew there was a war, and I just knew that that was our fear, that all of us children would be taken away from our parents and put somewhere else for safekeeping until after the war.